What's
Wonderful.
Dublin Airport like at the moment, Owen? Have you heard much about it in the past 24 hours or so for any of our listeners that are planning on jetting off soon?
It's working reasonably well. It's very crowded, but the queues are moving, and nobody missed a flight over the weekend. We had a lot of very early arrivals in the airport. That was the cycle of this. Is the first weekend the summer schedules came in, flights were missed all over social media. People were spooked a bit by that. They started arriving 3.5, 4, 5 hours early for flights. Dublin Airport were trying to roster according to flights. So they were putting in a very small security team at 2 and 1 in the morning. They had decided to open 24 hours, but that's where the problems arose. There was only two channels open and queues started going to 70, 80, 90 minutes. The weekend,
It looked like
last week's advice was don't arrive too early, and the weekend seems to have worked, but it is still a problem. It's a 30-minute queue in Terminal 2 as I'm sitting here speaking to you, and 20 minutes in Terminal 1. Before COVID, that would be regarded as an emergency level of queuing, but it's better than what we've seen in recent weeks.
Right, and a lot of it is to do with staffing issues, Owen, and getting the new crew in there and trained up, which is not an easy task.
Everything is to do with staffing. They don't have the staff. They're quite a good deal short. They'd have 600 security staff in Dublin Airport, and they were over 100 short. As you say, getting the people through the clearance process and getting them licensed and putting their feet on the ground is going to take till May. That will hopefully have solved the problem by the summer schedule, but it's not going to be solved easily between now and then, Eimear.
I had an interesting question from a listener this morning. They wanted me to ask you, is Dublin the only capital city airport, say, or EU capital that is without a rail connection to the airport?
Yes. Lisbon, it doesn't have a full rail connection, but they have the Lisbon equivalent of the Lewis.
Right.
So Dublin stands out. We have a very good private, particularly the private coach networks. Air Coach should be the best known, but there's about 12 of them. That's great for people in Kilkenny or Carlow that know about the bus services to the airport, but people arrive expecting. You expect when I fly into a capital city airport, I expect to see a metro line into the city centre, and people arrive into Dublin expecting this, and they don't get it. As I have pointed out a few times, Farran 4 has a better connection to the national rail network than Dublin is, which for an airport that was doing 32 million passengers a year, which we were before COVID, is quite an astonishing fact. The Metro Link, I've been covering aviation for a long, long time, and Dublin and journalism for a long, long time. It's been talked about for 15 years now, and it's going to be another 10 before it's put in place by the look of things.
Right. This morning, Owen, on our news, the fact that Waterford has been left out of this major investment being announced today for regional airports is causing some concern. What would you say about it?
We've too many airports in the island. We had 10 airports in the island. It's a small island. What happens with a regional airport, and we've got to look at what happened in Sligo and then in Galway, is that when the flights are in place, they don't have the level of activity that makes them work. You have all the regional airports would end up at a couple of London flights, usually Luton or Stansted, the cheaper airports, maybe Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool. But when people gravitate towards Dublin, which they do, it's because it has 200 destinations served out of Dublin, and the frequency of flights. If you're, for instance, coming back into Heathrow on a connecting flight, or Frankfurt or Charles de Gaulle, and your incoming is late, you have another flight in 2 hours, 3 hours. And in Heathrow's case, every hour or every 50 minutes. A regional airport doesn't offer that level of frequency. That's fine for if you have a region that attracts a very large number of inbound, and Shannon has got 4.3 million euro input from that scheme that you're talking about. But when it comes to a government working out, particularly with the green debate, the environmental debate running at the moment, what are you going to do with your regional airports? 10 of them in one island is far too many from where people are looking at in Brussels. And I know Waterford got a runway investment of about 10 million, I think it was back in Martin Cullen's time. But the other thing that happened to Waterford in Martin Cullen's time was that what was probably the worst road in the country, because you had to cross a railway line on your way into Waterford. It was put up to upgraded to motorway standard. In the island of Ireland, and this applies even for Belfast, Antrim, Armagh, Tyrone, and the island of Ireland, when you see the roads upgraded, it tends to bring more people towards Dublin and fewer to the regional airports.
Okay. Well, it's just, I suppose it's of concern to local people or to people in the region when they see it as providing employment, and they're probably looking at it from a different perspective. But if the harsh economics might say otherwise. It does generate
local jobs, and it's very important for inward investment that people have access to a good airport. But there is that period where you haven't got the critical mass to attract the services. Waterford, even when it had the funding behind it and it did get the runway, the next question was who's going to serve it? And it took a lot of negotiation to get the few English routes that they did. And very often airlines in the modern world, Michael O'Leary's past master at this, they come with a begging bowl and they say, we'll do you a favour. Give us money and we'll bring people into your region. So the investment in the airport is only the start of the greater investment. And we saw with Waterford that the carriers that did serve Birmingham and the routes that they had Luton, that they didn't last the pace because the critical mass of people using the airport and opting to use it rather than the bigger airport in Dublin, it was not reached.
Okay. I'm not sure if you're across the story at the moment as regards the rules in the US in response to COVID being lifted now after a big court decision over there. But masks were set to be mandatory until the 3rd of May on planes, trains, taxis and in transport hubs. But it looks like now a court ruling in Florida has thrown that into a state of flux. The law requiring masks on public transport. So it might be a change for Irish holiday makers maybe going to the US now.
Masks are coming across Europe, are coming off across Europe.
Yeah.
Now we're a little bit ahead of the curve on that. We dropped our masks earlier than some of the other European countries. Britain dropped it before us, but Spain is dropping them this week for most public. I think it's the 20th. So the American decision won't really impact on getting to and from America, because I suspect masking on aircraft is going to stay for a long time. It's something that all the countries in the world and the IATA have to decide on, but a decision to drop the masks won't happen very quickly, largely because COVID is a huge problem. Asia is still closed. What we are waiting from America, and we do expect to get it this week, is a decision that we no longer require a test. You just require an antigen test to go to America, but we are expecting that to be dropped. I expect that will do a power for bookings, because people are reluctant to travel to a country when they still need testing. And Canada dropped theirs April the 1st. We do expect the United States to drop the requirement for a test sometime this week. They don't give you any notice on this, Eimear. They decide it's going at midnight. It happens suddenly. But the way the American debate has developed is very different to the way it has in Europe.
Right. Finally, just to ask you, Eoghan, about changes. You mentioned masks there and changes to rules across Europe. There had been some countries that were quite strict, obviously.
Absolutely.
And even have been up until recently. I see Cyprus is one of the ones getting ready to welcome Irish tourists, and they won't have to complete this Cyprus flight pass within 48 hours of arrival from today. So I take it rules are relaxing across the board.
Rules are relaxing. The masking rules and the locator form, we dropped ours a few weeks ago and it's still there. I think I mentioned this the last time I was talking to you, Eimear.
Yeah, we got loads of questions on these.
There's a huge problem, and you can't say it often enough, that if you go looking for your locator form, it's gone from Spain, it's not gone from Portugal, France still has it, Italy still has it, Malta still has it. If you go and if you Google locator form, Italy, for example, the first people that will show up in your search are going to be people who are intermediaries who are going to charge you for the privilege of filling out your form. All the government locator forms are free. Lots of people have gone into a site they thought was the government, and then they're told to take out their credit card and pay €55 for the privilege. It's a scam. It's not an illegal scam, because they do say somewhere we're acting as an agent and we'll fill the form out for you. But I think Google has to answer to somebody for, the reason they finish higher in the search than the government is they pay Google to finish higher in the search, and people are paying unnecessarily. If you have a family of four and you pay €55 for each of them to fill out a locator form that's free, that's €220 out of your holiday budget. It is shocking. And that I'd love to see a common policy across Europe that, the countries that want locator forms have one site to go to. 4 countries have agreed on a site. Malta have a common locator form. It should have happened earlier, but watch for that. Do not pay to fill that locator form for the countries that still have it. Spain dropped it, Portugal still has it, Italy still has it, and France still has it.
Right, great advice, Eoghan. Your line is just dropping on us, but I think we've got the gist of all of that from Eoghan Corry, travel expert and journalist. Thanks to Eoghan for joining us and answering our questions as always, and good advice from him. Don't pay for that locator form. Do your homework before you travel, and make sure that you don't click on the very first link that you see in a Google search. Just look a little further and you'll find the locator form elsewhere, and it won't cost you anything, just a little bit of time and research.
Weekday mornings from 10 till 12. This is KCLR Live.